What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and this happens to be Adam Gase, former head coach of the New York Jets, best known for a horrific season littered with rumors and just distaste around the Le'Veon Bell situation, but also a horrific introductory press conference that left us all really weirded out and with negative vibes from start to finish of his tenure. This happens to be Robbie Patton, who is our director of player personnel, signed as one of the first members under Darren Mougey in this new regime. And somehow he's given us our first blunder under the Aaron Glenn experience and potentially a Adam Gase 2.0 type situation where, to set the context of the situation here, Darren Mougey and Robbie Patton happen to have been together at a press conference. Let's just call it a State of the Union, end of the off-season type of situation. Darren Mougey, for the 12 to 13 minute press conference or so, received the majority of the questions. Things like how his relationship between himself and Aaron Glenn has continued to, being built or thrive, what his expectations are for Justin Fields, and will he follow the path of the Sam Darnold's, Baker Mayfield's when it comes to that comeback story. And then, of course, the wide receiver room and his concerns around depth, or if he's really just surrounded Justin Fields with the best possible weapons given their resources and what they were capable of doing. But the last 2 to 3 minutes of the press conference was a question directed to Robbie Patton. Robbie Patton was asked to essentially give his synopsis of our New York Jets draft class. And not only for the majority, if not the entirety of this press conference, did he look really uncomfortable, lost, maybe, if you will. But when he was directly asked the question, the man was so floundered, he couldn't even remember who our draft picks were. Darren Mougey, as he continued to progress through them, which, by the way, I don't know if it was purposeful or not, also ended up skipping our first round pick, Armand Mimbu. But Darren Mougey essentially had to relay to him who the draft picks he were going to talk about. And he spent maybe, gave a 1 or 2 liner about what these guys did, but nothing of really any depth, nothing that really was surprising or news to any of the New York Jets fans, and really just kind of felt like he tried his best to regurgitate media training day, if you will. And so, of course, I'm looking at everything in a vacuum, right? For one, is this the end of the world? No. 2, let's set the context of the situation here with a guy like Robbie Patton. For one, there is a bit of, some patriarchal stuff going on here. Robbie Patton being the nephew of George Patton, Denver Broncos GM. When you look at his career pathing, Robbie Patton at least has ties to football, used to play safety, ended up getting a job as a DB coach back at his high school, then ended up working as a scouting analyst, going into the collegiate ranks, and then ultimately assumed work with the Denver Broncos, where he did receive multiple promotions, in fact 5 over the course of his 8 years spent with the Denver Broncos. But it always felt like a big leap when this name was announced as part of Darren Mougey's staff. There was a bit of concern because he's going from being a national scout to suddenly being in the big chair, right? It felt like there was a couple of positions in between these two things, or at least just a little longer of a tenure needed maybe before you would have felt comfortable with this particular name here. And it really just felt like a comfortability situation. But you have to trust that Darren Mougey isn't just fostering this, friends with benefits type situation, and he's pulling guys along just because he's happened to have worked with them. And I don't think Aaron Glenn would have let that fly either. But when it comes to the press conference and just the vibes it gave me, again, very Adam Gase-ish. But when I think about it, with him being a scout, 2 things can be true at the same time, right? You, as a scout, you're going to be out there building relationships with coaching staffs and or players as you look to progress throughout your career. And, guys look to, feed you maybe a little bit more information and details than someone that they aren't necessarily fond of and different things of that sort, but also you could be a social pariah or piranha, whatever the proper terminology is, where you are hitting the road in the car, miles and miles and miles. You are racking up the frequent flyer air miles. And so maybe there's not necessarily as much, human contact and relationship building and experience going on there. So hopefully it was just one of those situations where this is a guy not accustomed to being in the limelight and having, cameras and questions and such being asked of him in that particular setting. My hopes go to the fact that if this was a conversation around what he sees, just initially with the 2026 draft class or something like that, you would have seen him pipe up, much like we saw with Darren Mougey in the beginning of his press conferences. But I think even those two are a world of difference here. So it's not really much news. And for those, I see many people in the comments. I saw the SNY video. I saw the one from the New York Jets they both posted, but many people were commenting on some of the comments that I had, questioning who he was and different things of that nature as well. But again, just a bit of an oddity. But I think the concern for me just comes around, this is a player that's in a pivotal position for the New York Jets. Again, being a director of player personnel, that generally means that he's going to be handling, I believe, the New York Jets current staff, and of course whatever that means for trying to add guys in free agency and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe it's not, to my knowledge, it just makes the most sense. The draft class, huge event, is coming over. Obviously that's going to be a focal point of a lot of questions, and just the staff as a whole trying to develop these guys and get them ready as quickly as possible. But I'll give him some leeway. The one thing I will say is I am curious why him, right? Now, probably not a ton of other options that could have been out there, but just in terms of the front office, Jason Mandolisi, who's our director of college scouting, probably would have even been a better option here, but maybe he's out traveling or doing other scouting type things. And then even Rick Spielman, the senior football advisor, we haven't really heard from him much since he ended his consultant role and actually assumed this advisement role. But it would have been really intriguing to hear his thoughts and consider what's been going on from his purview, especially considering he's still been a helping hand in some of these additional coaching staff and front office hires that have been coming on, and even potentially some of the moves that are being made when it comes to the 53-man roster decision. So nonetheless, just kind of my thought process. It was a very nondescript press conference overall. I can't walk away saying that there was anything new or controversial or anything that really came up from it. But let me know what you guys think. Hopefully, at the very least, you know a little bit more about who the director of player personnel is now. And if you do have any major concerns around this odd press conference, I'd love to hear them in the comments. And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.